We are continuing to follow some breaking news at this hour that I did want to transition to, and that is this right here. This is from Fox News correspondent Trey Yingst as he shares this. He just spoke with President Trump, who says, quote, the deal with Iran is expected to be signed in the next 2 to 3 hours. President Trump said he asked Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu, what the expletive are you doing? On a call after the Israeli strikes against Beirut. He told Netanyahu not to conduct additional strikes. The president told me he will ask Iran not to respond with missile fire toward Israel. So that is the breaking news that we have been following since President Trump shared this with Fox News correspondent Trey Yingst, stating that a deal signing with Iran is expected to be imminent. That is set, he says, for the next 2 to 3 hours. I did want to also share this with you right here. This is a live look that I'm going to bring up, taking us live to Beirut as Israel had struck targets there in Beirut. And that is what President Trump was alluding to as he asked Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu not to have any further attacks. This comes as Israel's military said it did launch strikes on Hezbollah targets in Beirut, potentially complicating efforts to finalize a deal to end the U.S.-Iran war. So we've been following all of these developments on this Sunday. Iran threatening a military response to those attacks in Beirut. And President Trump at the time taking to social media again, stating, quote, we are very close to a deal that will bring peace to the region, including to Lebanon, adding, let's not blow it. The deal in its current form is a disappointment to Israel's government, which has been sidelines in negotiations led by Pakistan and others. The last time Israel struck a Beirut suburb a week ago, it set off the most serious escalation of fighting between Iran and Israel since that ceasefire took place on April 7th. So President Trump now saying that a deal could be signed in the next 2 to 3 hours. He has pressed Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to stop hitting Lebanon hard while a deal is near. But at least up until recently, the prime minister defying him, stating that the strikes were in response to Hezbollah attacks on northern Israel. Israel's military has said Hezbollah launched 3 projectiles, releasing footage where you could actually hear a boom followed by rising smoke. So we are continuing to follow the very latest on all of this. And for more on these developments, I do want to bring in John Hanna, who is a senior fellow at JINSA, to talk more on these breaking news developments. And John, as always, we appreciate you joining us here on Live Now from Fox.
Thanks so much for having me. Pleasure to be with you.
So we do have the new development. This is per Fox News correspondent Trey Yingst speaking directly with President Trump by phone, stating that President Trump has now indicated that a deal signing between the U.S. and Iran could be as close as 2 to 3 hours away. What do you make of this latest news? And, you know, can you just share with folks who may not be aware of the particulars of this deal, what they are?
Well, I think you have to caveat this by saying if you had $100 for every time President Trump over the last couple of months has said that a deal was at hand imminently, you'd be a lot wealthier than you were at the start of this process. So let's hope that he's right. But the Iranians haven't confirmed yet even that there's going to be a signing at all today. And with these events now in Lebanon, the Iranians have been insisting that attacks in Beirut are a red line for them, and they'll have to respond to any kind of Israeli attack in Beirut. As you mentioned, they did that a week ago, and it set off a pretty scary situation in terms of possible escalation for several days. We're going to have to see if cooler heads can prevail in Iran. The president, obviously, very eager to get this deal done. And with his truth socials about his interactions with Prime Minister Netanyahu, clearly trying to signal to the Iranians that he's against these strikes. He's committed to trying to get a ceasefire in Lebanon as well as one between Iran and the United States, and hoping that that'll get the Iranians to stand down from any further actions of their own against Israel. But it's a touchy situation right now, and we'll have to see how it plays out.
John, you bring up a really good point, stating that President Trump has previously stated that a deal is imminent. Is this time different? And if so, how can you share with us how the current developments, how the current time frame might be a little bit different from those previous times when he did state that he was expecting a deal to be signed, only for one not to be?
Yeah, well, this one does feel a little different, in part because you have not only President Trump and some of his negotiators suggesting we are very close to getting a memorandum of understanding done to extend this ceasefire and reopen the Straits of Hormuz, and then begin a 60-day period of further negotiations to try and finalize the outstanding big questions on the fate of Iran's nuclear program. So, but now you also have had the Iranians suggesting that we also are getting close, as well as the Pakistani mediators, who did suggest, the Prime Minister of Pakistan, that we might actually have a signing ceremony today, that all the parties had basically agreed to everything that was in this short memorandum of understanding. So I do think you have some additional indicators from other parties involved here, including the Iranians, that we're beginning to really narrow the differences and are getting quite close to this, at least this phase one agreement to extend the ceasefire, reopen the straits in some form, and then begin a period of negotiation on the really tough questions about the fate of Iran's nuclear program, as well as whatever kinds of advanced sanctions relief the Iranian economy may get out of that.
And John, you mentioned this really would be, if signed, a memorandum of understanding. So step one in a long process as the negotiations will then resume. Can you talk about what might be in this memorandum of understanding, as you did point out that there continue to be some of these sticking points, including reopening the Strait of Hormuz, also including Iran's nuclear program?
Yeah, well, first, you have to caveat, I haven't seen what's in the deal. I've seen lots of leaks from both sides trying to spin the deal as favorable to them. There's a lot that they're both saying on either side about what's in the deal that are inconsistent, even contradictory. But what I'll be looking for in broad strokes is that phase one, to reopen the Straits of Hormuz in some form. The question is how quickly that will happen. Hopefully that happens within 30 days. What kinds of controls and constraints the Iranians still continue to be able to operate on the Straits. It sounds like the issue of tolling commercial traffic is out, but the Iranians continue to say they may be able to charge some kind of fees for environmental fees or other types of fees for their efforts to keep the straits open, as well as some effort demand that commercial ships do have to coordinate their passage through the straits with the Iranian Revolutionary Guard. So that would obviously be problematic. And then there's a question of, do the Iranians receive economic benefits up front simply for opening the straits and returning to a situation where they were open before February 28th and not receiving any kind of economic relief for that. The administration insists they won't get anything until the straits are fully open. But after, assuming we get the straits solved and don't have to pay the Iranians too much for that, or have some of our Arab partners bribe them under the table for that, then we go to the really hard part of a 60-day negotiating period to deal with this fundamental problem that has been at the core of the U.S., Iranian, and Israeli tensions for the better part of 3 decades. And that's, what's the fate of Iran's nuclear program? How much of it are they going to be able to retain? What happens to this highly enriched uranium that is allegedly buried underground, but they might be able to get access to eventually? Are we going to be able to get that out, blend it down, dilute it so it's not quite the danger it is, and even get it out of the country? And how much sanctions relief is Iran going to get for that? Unfortunately, even if we were to get by the nuclear program, we still leave on the table the questions of the Iranian huge missile and drone arsenal, which is really what shut down the Straits in the first place and really was the instigator for this war. We were worried the Iranians were building up such a huge missile capacity that it would become almost impossible for the United States and Israel to attack them without suffering huge damage to our Gulf partners, to global energy markets. And behind that fear, they'd be able to dash to complete a nuclear weapon. But the missiles don't seem to be part of this deal at all, nor do the issue of Hezbollah, the Houthis, the Iraqi militias, Hamas. Is Iran going to be able to continue to fund all of its proxies and take whatever sanctions relief we give it to fund these terrorist groups around the region that have been such a threat to Israel first and foremost, but obviously to the United States interests and United States citizens in that part of the world as well?
And John, you brought up Hezbollah. We're taking a live look there in Beirut, Lebanon. Israeli has struck a number of Hezbollah targets there. But I did want to share with our viewers once again, if they're just joining us, what Trey Yingst has shared, stating in a phone call with President Trump, he did say that he had asked Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu, what the expletive are you doing, on a call after the Israeli strikes against Beirut. And Trump has previously used very strong language against Netanyahu about these strikes. John, a twofold question for you. How could this latest round impact what I would call a bit of a tenuous relationship now between the United States and Israel? And could this impact, if at all, the negotiations and the memorandum of understanding between the United States and Iran?
Well, I think on your latter question, how does it affect the negotiations? I think we're all really now waiting to see what the Iranians do. Do they kind of slough off this Israeli strike in Beirut, which they've been saying is a red line of their strikes in Beirut? They would have to react by responding against Israel. If they do that at some point today, that'll obviously impact the negotiations and probably make it very hard for President Trump to sign a memorandum of understanding. If the Iranians instead say, okay, we're willing to overlook that, President Trump has chastised Prime Minister Netanyahu, that's good enough for us, we'll go ahead and sign this MOU regardless, then we'll be on a different track. I do have to say that, I mean, it's clear that one of the Iranian objectives here is not only to say, we're going to have now real power over the Gulf and the Strait of Hormuz as a result of this war, but we are now going to have a formal role and be recognized as a major player in determining questions of war and peace in Lebanon itself, right on that Israeli border. And if Hezbollah is firing missiles at Israel, we're going to have a say in whether Israel gets to respond to those attacks on its citizens or not. And we're going to drive this wedge between the United States and Israel to show our power in the region. I think that's probably what the Iranian objective here is, to split the United States and Israel. And I'm hoping that President Trump won't play into that Iranian game, that if Israel does get attacked inside of Israel by Hezbollah, Israel, of course, like any other nation, especially the United States, would demand we have to have a right to respond to that in self-defense and take whatever action we need to protect our citizens.
It's going to be very interesting to see what happens in the next 2 to 3 hours, as President Trump has indicated that he is anticipating the signing of the Memorandum of Understanding. This also comes ahead of his visit to the G7 summit as we look ahead to the coming hours and also the coming days, where the Iran war will be one of the focal points in those discussions there at the G7 summit. What particularly are you keeping a very close eye on, in terms of not just action, but also the language, as you were mentioning? Sometimes there's conflicting announcements from the U.S. and Iran as they're working towards we don't even know what.
Yeah, no, clearly what happens today, obviously, we're going to have one of two divergent outcomes. We're either going to get an MOU signed, and then we'll be on to the next phase of negotiations and hopefully getting some relief for the global economy in the Straits of Hormuz, or we could have a new cycle of escalation and violence over these events in Lebanon. So that'll be critical in affecting what the discussions will be like at the G7. Hopefully the discussions at G7 will be, okay, we've got an MOU, Iran is going to open the Straits. Now, is there a role for our European allies to come in with their own navies during the ceasefire and help monitor that situation in the Gulf to ensure the Iranians are complying with any obligations they have to help clear out the Gulf from mines and allow true freedom of navigation to return? I'm also obviously going to be looking at, to the extent we can divine, how much were the Iranians paid to reopen the Straits? How much were they given up front? The administration will clearly try to say there's no payment at all to Iran. This is not like the Obama-era nuclear deal where there were billions of dollars paid to the Iranians just simply for the fact of agreeing to the deal. President Trump badly wants to avoid that, and he wants to convince his supporters here in the United States that he's achieved real advancements for American security as a result of this war. I think it's going to be hard to do because the Iranians have clearly survived the war. They've got some say now in the Straits of Hormuz that they didn't have before. They've demonstrated ability not only to badly damage American bases in the Gulf, but to damage and hold at risk our best friends in the Arab Gulf, as well as Jordan. And that's a power that, while was always theoretical, had never been demonstrated before in an actual war. The Iranians have now done that. They've taken a big hit as a result from the United States and Israel, but they have established a new form of new levers for their own deterrence in the region. They're trying to now assert that in Lebanon as well, something they didn't really have before. So I'm going to look at how all that plays out and how the balance of power and the balance of leverage between the United States and Iran goes forward, particularly how it affects this negotiation on the ultimate question of Iran's nuclear program.
All right, John Hanna, as always, we appreciate you joining Live Now from Fox and providing your insight and expertise.
All right, thanks so much.
Before we head to break, I did want to share these live looks right here on the left-hand side of your screen. A live look of the White House on the right-hand side, a live look of Tel Aviv, as according to Fox News correspondent Trey Yingst, who spoke by phone with President Trump, a deal with Iran is expected to be signed in the next 2 to 3 hours. All of this coming as President Trump has had a tense conversation and exchange with Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu after the Israeli strikes against Beirut, where, according to Trey Yingst, President Trump asked Netanyahu, what the expletive are you doing, before asking Netanyahu not to conduct additional strikes. We're going to continue to follow all of these developments and, of course, share with you if and when that U.S.-Iran deal is signed.